One of the most empowering things I've done in my decentering men journey is always bring my toy to hookups. Yep, that's right. Bring the vibrator to schmegs. Schmegs with strangers, one night stands, whatever. Schmegs with boyfriends. Schmegs with husbands. Like, my toy gets a seat at this table. Will we always use the toy? No. Hopefully, it won't even have to come out. Because hopefully you're eating my good so that I don't even need it. Sometimes these guys are not that great at it or whatever. And stimulation is a critical part of me being able to get up. So I talk a lot about this in this piece that I wrote for the Daily Beast this year. It's probably behind a paywall. If you've already read one article, I think you maybe can read a couple for free a month. I'm not sure. But this is my journey from not having my first O until the age of 36, real O, to making sure that I always had an O. Every time. I'm not hooking up with you unless you center my O. I got 36 years to make up. Well, maybe not 36 because I'm not, trying to get an O when I'm a baby or whatever. If you want to know the context around why I started doing this, that story will tell. But what I realized is that I was so tired of doing walks of shame and being resentful and, all that stuff because I was literally giving my body, giving my time, giving my conversation, my listening skills, giving all this stuff, and even giving free advice. Because I swear to God, by the end of my tender bender, I should have been charging these dudes for life coaching or just listening to them because they don't have any friends and they don't talk to anyone about anything and they won't pay a therapist. So, anyway, I realized that one of the ways that I can, not do walks of shame is to not hook up with men who make me feel used and ashamed. So beyond a very crazy strict vetting process, I also, right out of the gate, in texts with dudes that I was going to hook up with, was are you going to eat my... And then their response told me everything I needed to know. If they're what? Are you going to suck my... I'd be nope, you're done. But anyway, even those guys who I got in writing are going to eat my... even those guys, I always had my burner with me because maybe they sucked at it. I was fighting for my O like my life depended on it. And that may sound silly to some. For me, the bedroom was the final frontier of advocating for myself, advocating for my right to be a human being, for my right to pleasure, for my right to be respected and an active participant in this instead of just this dead fish. Google that term. That stuff is done to. As if I'm a blow-up doll. And so my O being centered was critical. And for me at the time, especially because I had a whole lot of schmegsual trauma and had a hard time relaxing, and because so many men don't know what they're doing, I brought my rhyme burner every time. I loved seeing the look on their face and ask if we can use it. I would just inform them that I'm pulling this sucker out. And I swear, here's the thing. I'm not that kind of person who would just be this is how it's done. Them the rules. But this was kind of that thing of act as if, I wanted to be that kind of person. I wanted to be that bold. So even though I was scared, I just started being that bold. Again, before in my comments being that's dangerous. I'm telling you, this is dangerous. You're always taking a risk, okay? But for me, after I did a whole lot of vetting, I felt safe and, safe enough to meet up with them. Always had my burner, always had it charged or had batteries if it was a little bullet. I never did walks of shame. I did walks of hell yeah, that was great. For those of you who know how much I love Grace and Frankie, I actually got to interview Brooklyn Decker and Baron Vaughn from Grace and Frankie for this piece I wrote for Playboy a few years ago. Baron and I used to do comedy in LA, and I love him so much. But in this interview, he gave a really insightful interview about the use of a in a scene with his on-screen girlfriend. And he said, men have been taught for too long to look at the world through the lens of functionality and purpose. And what Grace and Frankie did, especially in this episode, first of all, Grace and Frankie they're almost 80, and they start a vibrator business for women, older women who have arthritis and stuff. So if you have not seen the show, I'm telling you, it is the best love story on TV of all time, and it's between two best friends. two women, Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin. But also there's a lot of great, storylines between the other cast members. And so there's one episode where his, Bud, which is Baron's character, and his girlfriend, she just pulls out like a recorder after they've had schmegs. And he was just like so hurt because he's like, wait, I thought we had fun. Like, why do you need that? And she's like, this has nothing to do with you. And so many men, because of their conditioning, everything is about them. Everything is about their fragile ego, which is when he's talking about how, women's entitlement to pleasure is one of the biggest themes of this show. How a lot of U.S. American men, and this scene points this out, male fragility. Now, it's not just U.S. American men, okay? In my personal experience, and I believe a lot of this is because of purity culture and just like the toxically masculine, violent, competitive, hyper-capitalistic, white supremacy culture, misogyny that, is like the foundation of our society. I think some things are a little bit more extreme in the U.S. And I think male fragility there is pretty bad. And he says, so men, because men are taught to think of themselves as the most powerful things on earth. And now women have these machines that are not only built better than we are, but they never wear out and can be replaced by even better machines. Aren't they too? Been taught to look at schmegs in terms of purpose, similar to someone who looks at eating only in terms of fuel instead of social situation that you share with others. Him and I had a long chat about all this. A lot of the interview was cut out for word count. But basically, men have been conditioned to think that schmegs is about one thing, pleasure, but only their pleasure. It's like you have to come and it has to be him, rather than let's just have fun together and do something together. It's a social thing. It's not about functionality. And I've actually had to unlearn that because part of my condition, I got so obsessed with centering my O that I've actually had to like pull back a little bit and be like, wait a second. I'm actually like starting to think like a man where like, my husband's the one who's called me on this because he's a very romantic, like emotional person. And I'm more of like the dude. And sometimes like he just wants to hold me and connect and be, affectionate and loving and kiss and all that stuff. And I'm just like, where's my O? Like, let's get to it. I'm like, oh my God. I've talked about how I'm like been the toxically masculine feminist and had to unlearn that. So, this plays out differently in long-term relationships than hookup because long-term relationships are based on safety, or they should be based on safety and love and connection and vulnerability and expressing love, all those things, right? But hookups had one purpose. Now, a couple. I usually had fun talking to these guys. It was like, whatever, it's fun. But if I come out of a one-night stand with a dude I'm never talking to again and I didn't have an O, I was pissed because every time they had an O. So to solve that, I made them at least try to eat and I always brought my toy. That may sound a little like too bold and too crazy. I'm not saying you have to do that, but what I am saying is that changed my whole life. Because once I started realizing that I am strong enough to advocate for my pleasure, that I respect myself and my body enough to be an equal partner in this exchange, when I started to see that, oh my God, this like little scared, shy, passive-aggressive Southern white girl is now like a bold woman who doesn't take crap for men and who does not let them get away with centering themselves in my bed. Boy, I became a lot more confident in every area of my life. The bedroom, the home itself, but especially the bedroom, is for me the most important place to advocate for myself and to be a feminist. And yet it's also the hardest for a lot of us, especially if we have schmegdual trauma. So I had so much trauma, so much fear, in addition to purity culture that I've been trying to unlearn. And so for me, that was the place that set me free. Once I became the woman I've always wanted to be without any clothes on, I respected myself on a whole new level.